Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
I'm okay with this as bumper music, but I'm only okay with it once it's recognizable. That beginning sounds, I don't know, like from the 70s or something.
Yeah, it does. Very good.
I don't know what it is. It's okay once the electric guitar starts pumping away.
Yeah.
All right. Boy, I wish I had taken that Evelyn Woods course on speed reading now. The book is here, and the author is already on the phone, so I don't have even a second to read it. But it's called Song of Atlantis. I know a little bit about it because I did read up on it on the internet, so that's one of the things I like about the internet. And I've always been fascinated with Atlantis. I've always been fascinated with this idea that once upon a time on planet Earth, we had this amazingly developed civilization that somehow just disappeared, and they had in their knowledge and abilities the ability to create power, like just energy, right?
Right.
Brian Power, coincidentally with his name, is a retired Marine Corps Reserve Lieutenant Colonel. He served for 24 years on both active duty and in the reserves. He's a teacher who has taught at the high school and college levels. He's a retired corporate consultant, and he has become a very accomplished author as well. On Amazon, you will see a 5-star rating across the board, and that's it's always impressive when you see somebody who's able to please the readers with that kind of response. So let's find out about the book. It's called Song of Atlantis, and we live here in Florida. I think we're not too far from one of the corners of the what's it called, Bermuda Triangle?
Yes.
But some of this story takes place in North Dakota, right?
That's right.
All right, so we're going to get here everything we need to know. Good morning, Brian. It's an honor to have you on our show.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and Robin.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I apologize for the mail. I guess with the holidays and with the day of mourning on Wednesday, so I guess there's a couple of different reasons why the book didn't get here till today. But anyway, you're here, so you're going to tell us about it. Tell me about yourself first. Did you, in writing the book, did all of those credentials you have, did it lend itself to what you ended up writing in the book?
To a great degree, yeah. It's a lot of it came from life experiences, things that I experienced as a child, as well as things I experienced as a grown-up, particularly as a Marine. And but it was a lot of it was really about a range of things that I had read that kind of it also started falling together, and I all of a sudden started writing one night, and I couldn't stop. It was just one of those things that I kind of blended in a whole bunch of different stuff, and it started to work.
So what fascinated you about Atlantis? And then we'll be fair to the story and make sure we let the listeners know what's in store for them if they read the book. But what fascinated you about Atlantis?
Well, just what you said. It's just there's this mystery that went on. Something happened a long, long time ago. There was an advanced culture, and we're all kind of aware of that. This myth of Atlantis, it took different forms. Was it an island in the Atlantic Ocean? Was it someplace in the Mediterranean? Was it in the Indian Ocean? But all the clues indicate that this was an advanced civilization that had great capabilities, and so it's one of those intriguing things that you want to kind of explore it and use your imagination on it.
Yeah. And so in the writings of like Plato and well, I would discount Donovan because I can't imagine how he would know anything. But I mean, that wasn't a slam against Donovan, by the way. It's just that he lived in modern times. He didn't live back then. So does that give us a clue, or is all of that in the same page as the Greek gods and those kinds of writings?
Yeah. Well, let's start with Donovan. Donovan was simply echoing what was already the myth, that Atlantis was an advanced civilization that sent travelers out to distant lands to bring cultural advancement, so he just took that and made a song out of it. But Plato, of course, talked about this great island nation, this advanced island nation that fought a war 9,000 years before Plato, that it was a land bigger than Libya, and it sank into the ocean. Well, wow. That's you might not trust Donovan, but you gotta go with Plato.
Well, I don't want to be too stuck on the historical Atlantis, because the book is what we really want to talk about. But one more question: are there any places on the Earth that you think might be what used to be Atlantis?
Yeah. I think that, and there's a number of things. There's a book called Meet Me in Atlantis, and the guy explores all of the major places around the Mediterranean that could have been Atlantis. The theory of it being an island that drifted down to become Antarctica is not a new theory. That was Graham Hancock floated that one 20 years before, and that's why that was one of the things that had been floating in my head, to say, well, my Atlantis is going to be Antarctica. That's not I'm not killing anything in the book for anybody, but right. It's there's enough myth around to say there's some place on Earth that was Atlantis.
Yeah, and I've seen a few things too. Now, I don't mean with my own eyes. I mean just on the internet or in actual books. So tell who's the protagonist in the story?
Well, the protagonist is Gordon Tallbear. He's a PhD anthropologist who happens to also be a Lakota Indian, from the Sioux Indian Nation in South Dakota. And his family has a history of brilliance. They took advantage of the white man's educational offerings from the late 1800s onward, and he was just one of those people who said that he wanted to pursue. His dad is a psychiatrist, but he decided that he wanted to pursue anthropology and get to know all about the Native Americans. So, and he ends up discovering this preserved remains in the Badlands of South Dakota that it turns out are a mirror image of himself. Once these remains are computer enhanced, what would this individual look like today? This mummified body. It turns out it looks like Tallbear's brother.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's one of the storylines, and that storyline goes back to 8,000 years ago. The main storyline goes back 12,000 years to the actual origins of this power source and this technology. From this advanced culture. But Gordon Tallbear is he's the guy. He's charismatic, a natural leader. One of those guys that could kind of do everything. He's smart and he's good looking and he's and he's handsome. My people who've read the book say, isn't he a little bit unreal? I say, yeah, but he's my guy. He's who I want. He's the guy I want to be.
So connect the dots from North Dakota to Antarctica. How does that happen?
Okay, well, Tallbear he works for a secretive research facility called the Denver Center. And one of the other teams from the Denver Center, simultaneously to Tallbear's discovery, they're exploring the mountains of Antarctica, looking for what I refer to as acoustic anomalies, some echoes and hollow sounds, and they discover a cavern system down there, and that is actually where they discover this is where the last people of Atlantis went, and they made this sophisticated cavern system as their continent drifted down into the Antarctic zone.
Okay. So that's what happened. It didn't sink; it drifted.
It drifted, yeah. So it's a thing called it's crustal displacement theory, I think is what Graham Hancock referred to it as. It's kind of like the idea of the skin of an orange. So if it lifted off the orange a little bit, you could rotate the crust without disturbing the orange.
Huh.
So.
And so do you bring anything into your book about Atlantis, about the pyramids? Is there some kind of correlation there?
Absolutely. The Great Pyramid at Giza, again, this is not a really big spoiler. It's on the cover of the book. It's the Great Pyramid at Giza is really what the Atlanteans had actually built 12,500 years ago to be a power source. And they working with the vibrations of the earth. In harmony, and the whole thing about the Song of Atlantis is that the Atlanteans worked. They communicated in a song language, and all of their technology was based on music. So that when they invented this power source, it was the power source was designed to work off the natural vibration of the earth and the key of Fsharp, which it really does. But through the pyramid, it would create an energy vibration that would convert hydrogen into pure energy.
The key, the earth vibrates in Fsharp?
It does.
How do we hear that? How do we know that?
Well, it's a lot below our hearing level, but it's kind of like the way dogs can hear way above our normal hearing level, but you go way down low, and the Earth has a natural resonance, and it happens to be in the key of Fsharp.
Well, that is interesting. Wow. So when in writing the book, in order to weave into the story some of the theories about Atlantis and about this civilization that may have existed on Atlantis, are we looking back to look forward? I mean, are we heading now, the people we are now, are we like ancient people to our progeny, or I guess our children's children, and will we be there again, do you think? That's a crazy question, I guess.
No, it's a good question, and it's one of those questions that I think I've really been toying with. I believe that we evolve in different levels. We had an advanced civilization before us. It crashed for whatever reason, and then our current civilization grew. And is it going to take us another 5,000 years to get to their level? I don't know. But I think it's this idea that we are. Someday in the future, we're going to be looked upon as a great ancient civilization if we don't screw ourselves up.
Right. The way we record information now is going to be impossible for the future to actually figure out what these little like thumb drives, what's on them. I mean, how will they ever know unless they've got the same program? We can't even read our own thumbnails now. If you got a Mac and it's supposed to go into Windows, you're lost, right? So, I mean, there might have been information back then that was left that we just don't have a clue that we're even looking at something that's stored information.
And I talk about that in the book. How did we uncover this information? Well, okay, we discovered these caves. We discovered this advanced technology in there, but how do we translate that? And it's, again, the mathematics, the smart folks in math, can figure that out. And it's just like when you take a look at the Great Pyramid, they left all the clues there. That if you take a look at the measurements of the Great Pyramid, the perimeter of the base multiplied by 43,200 is the exact diameter, exact circumference of the Earth at the equator. The vertical radius of the pyramid from peak to floor multiplied by 43,200. It's the exact polar radius of the Earth. There's so many other measurements within the pyramid that, when divided out, add up to 365.24, which is the exact number of days in a year. This is not an accident. We've just got to be smart enough
figure
to
it out.
How do we break the code here?
So I think what you're displaying for us is a lot about yourself. I mean, you've got this amazing career as a teacher and as somebody who served in the reserves and with the Marine Corps, and I just think that a lot of what you've put into the book is kind of just like you said, the pyramids give us a clue as to what the civilization was like. There's a clue about you. I mean, and the fact that your mind goes in this direction, I think it's really brilliant.
Well, thank you. I wouldn't have gone that far, but I'll take it. But it's there is so much of me in there, and I like any artist, you end up dumping a lot of your own personal stuff into a book, and there is I'm unashamedly I built a lot of things from my own life into some of my characters, and it was. It's a wonderful experience to do that. This is my first time effort as an author, and but it was. And one of the interesting things that, if anybody out there who's interested in writing a book, once you get into it and you start typing, all of a sudden you get to a certain point, you get into a zone, and all of a sudden something else is taking over, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I didn't know the character was going to do that." And it was just an amazing experience. Wow. Yeah. So it was just a fun time, when I wrote it. So. And
you also get into the construction of the structures. I mean, gosh, you've got the pyramids, you've got Stonehenge, and then even in our state of Florida, you've got the Coral Castle.
Oh, the Coral Castle. All those things are these wonderful miracles. How did these things happen? There's and the Coral Castle, I think, is a case in point. One man working at night, nobody ever saw him do anything, erected these massive, huge stones, and got them to balance perfectly. And you're going, and he didn't have any real tools. I think he had a radio, and I think that was it. How did he do it? So there's some way that people knew how to lift these things. Stonehenge is another wonderful mystery. That all the stone was quarried in Wales. It was ferried across to England. It was dragged tons of miles over to the Salisbury Plain. And it was erected in such a way that it's a perfect solar calendar, and that is aligned perfectly with the sunrise on the solstice. It's like, how the heck did that happen?
It is. I mean, there's all the W's, the who, like who did these things, and who, and why? Why did they have to get rock from so far away? And how? I mean, the how is in the case of the Coral Castle here in Florida. I mean, too bad we didn't ask the guy before he died.
I don't think he would have told you.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he knew something we didn't know, and maybe that's the same thing as Gordon Tallbear in the book. Maybe he was onto something that he thought was better not to be shared.
Who knows? It was, but I think that there's, when you take a look at when these places were supposed to have been built, not the Coral Castle, but Stonehenge and the Dolmen Stones in Ireland and the, Newgrange in Ireland and a number of other places, the pyramids certainly. The people at that time, did not have the tools to do that job. They didn't have the granite cutting capability. They didn't have the lifting capability. How was this done by people with only primitive means at their disposal? That to me has always been a fun question to toy with, and that I think is what really drove the writing of the book.
Okay, and the fact that you are wondering about those things tells me that your characters would therefore be theorizing. If you're wondering, then your characters are theorizing and maybe coming up with answers. Have you had feedback? You're getting really good feedback. So are you hearing from people who say, I've often thought that was probably the case when you suggest theories on how these things were done or why they were done?
Yeah, most people are surprised with my theory about the music, but they are, they're in agreement with me about a lot of the other stuff. They just kind of said, "Gee, how did you come up with music?" And I don't know how I come up with music, but it's, all those theories about how things are done, that's been floating around in my head forever. Yeah.
And your book is not just descriptive. You have different characters in there with different personalities, and you have a lot of dialogue going on.
Absolutely, yeah. I have. I think that everybody has commented on how rich the characters are. So it's not just Gordon Tallbear, but Joanna and Chuck and Madison Tolles, the billionaire who's funding all of this, and all the other people. These are characters that are pretty rich. And I drew from a lot of people that I know to create those characters. So there's a reality about them. And even some of the lesser characters, I drew on a lot of people I knew to create the mosaic of the lesser characters as well. So that's one of the things people compliment me on, is saying, "Geez, I really like your characters." Well, that's good,
And you do have the bad guys in there too. I mean, you have to have that friction. You have to have that. Ooh, I wonder if the good guys are gonna, come out on top.
Yeah, and the bad guys. Yeah, I borrowed from an old term, the gnomes of Zurich. That's an old bad guy that was used years ago, in a number of different books as being this omniscient bad group, with mysterious funding. And I thought, well, let's take that, and I added a layer on that because back 12,500 years ago, there was an evil person that almost destroyed Atlantis, and before they were able to regain their culture from him, and he fled to the Central American area. And today, his offspring is one of the leaders of the Gnomes of Zurich, and I made him as evil as I possibly could. And the story I told about his evilness, that was a story lifted directly from my father's first cousin, who had been a missionary in Africa in Tanganyika from 1938 to 1960, and he told a story one day at a family outing about how the voodoo priest there had summoned the devil, and how he had to fight the devil. And I used that story actually for this bad guy in the book. So it gives the bad guy a layer that goes right to the devil. So it's
wow. And who knows? I mean, a lot of this, you might be hitting on some truths. The one part I want to ask you about is when you talk in the book about color, about the discovery of the primary colors and how one of the artists used Pointillism. How does that play into this story?
Yeah, that was one of those funny things. We had I lived near Providence, Rhode Island, and we used to have before he passed away, a guy who did a monthly contribution to the newspaper. He would do these columns on God knows what. And one day he did this thing on Pointillism and how it all came about. And it was how somebody had discovered that there were, you put three different dots of color together, and in your mind's eye, they create a fourth color. And that's how Pointillism was actually formed. So I thought, well, gee, it's got to be the same with music. And so because you put two notes together, and in your mind's eye, you hear a third note. So it's like
that's interesting.
Yeah, if you recall the Everly Brothers back in the 50s and 60s, they had these wonderful harmonies, but they sounded like more than just two guys singing. And that's because in your mind's eye or your mind's ear, you think you're hearing more than you're actually hearing. And so I took that theory of music and blended it with the theory of color and said, there's something here, and maybe this is where technology. There's probably no scientific merit at all to the idea, but I just thought, Well, let me play with this idea and see where it goes.
No, I think you might be onto something that nobody's thought of before. I just find the way you think to be fascinating. All right, the book is called Song of Atlantis. I have a copy of it if you want the one that was sent to me. We just got it, so it's fresh out of the mailroom.
Yeah.
Just give us a call. I'll make sure I pick up a caller at random, and you can have it. I'm going to buy my own copy. I'll put it on a Kindle. I can see it on here available as a Kindle.
Yeah.
It's got 5-star reviews. Brian, do you have a different website you want to direct us to?
Songofatlantis.com. That'll give you a lot of the background on this whole thing, and I think you'll enjoy it.
All right, very good. Brian, have a good holiday season, and good luck with the book. Thank you for coming on to talk to us about it.
Thank you, Larry and Robin. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
AccuSleep offers a safe and effective medical option for those who suffer from sleep disorders of all kinds. AccuSleep makes restoring healthy sleep patterns possible. No medication, no surgery, just good sound sleep. Mend your sleep so you can stop counting sheep. Experience restorative sleep at AccuSleep, the acupuncture sleep clinic in Ocala by calling 352-615-5566.
Hi, I'm Anthony with Finishing Touch Floors. Are you considering covering your old wood floors? Forget about it. Let Finishing Touch Floors restore your old wood floors. We offer sanding, refinishing, installation, and custom colored stains. With over 35 years experience, you need to call 321-396-2657. Let us put the finishing touch on your wood floors. For your free estimate, call 321-396-2657. That's 321-396-2657.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. Governor-elect Ron DeSantis announced yesterday he's tapping former House Speaker Richard Corcoran to be Education Commissioner and State Representative Jared Moskowitz to head Florida's Division of Emergency Management. Both men had been opponents during DeSantis' campaign. A building at the Souls Harbor First Pentecostal Church in Dunellen sustained serious damage from a fire that required the response of firefighters from 4 stations. A fireball was caught on camera cutting through the Central Florida sky Wednesday morning, but NASA says it was just the sun refracting off of a vapor trail from a jet. Newly filed legislation would make failure to